Welcome, Julio Rosas, who is a senior writer at Townhall and an author. You served our country as a Marine. Thank you for taking the time to visit with us on Broadcast Row.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Now, you are fresh from a panel discussion with Ted Cruz and some other people. You just got off the stage here at CPAC. Tell us about that panel discussion. It had to do with the border and immigration?
Yeah, so I was with the chairman of the Homeland Security Committee, Mark Green, and former ICE acting director, Tom Homan. We were talking about the border crisis. For my part, I have been covering the border since 2019, actually. And so obviously things have become very, very different under the current administration. And really we were just going over about how now that Republicans are in charge of the House, what does this mean about the path forward legislatively? What does it mean for possibly impeaching Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas? And just really, what does the future hold? And so, I mean, the border has never been, quote unquote, solved, but at least under the prior administration, things were moving in the right direction. I mean, and that's something that was evident to me during my time covering back in 2019, 2020, and then 2021. Obviously, things changed and things have gotten worse. And every time I would think things would be okay, can't get any worse than this. And then it somehow just spirals out of control in a different way or in a different area. And so really, this is an ongoing problem, and it will continue to be an ongoing problem until drastic changes are made.
Now, you've been advocating, and I read your pieces on Town Hall, about holding congressional hearings about the border at the border itself.
Yeah.
Tell us why this is so important.
So don't get me wrong. I understand about people's criticism with Congress about hearings, and because you just have to look back not too long ago about, we had these hearings, and then what came of it, right? Not really much. And so I understand why there's skepticism. I understand why people think, well, it's a waste of time, waste of money. But really, one of the reasons why, I just came back from Yuma, Arizona. The House Judiciary Committee had their first hearing. The Homeland Security Committee is having their hearing in McAllen, Texas on the 15th. I'll be going to that. One of the reasons why it's important to, one, just get politicians out of D.C., but it's to reconnect with the rest of Americans. And it really struck me because at the Judiciary Committee in Yuma, it was held in the Yuma City Council chamber, and it was full. It was packed. It was an open event for the public to attend, and every seat was filled. They had to turn people away because they didn't, for safety and fire capacity.
Sure.
And people were telling me that it meant so much to them because time and again I have heard from so many people that live at the border that they feel abandoned, that they feel forgotten by DC, and they're not entirely wrong, right? They're right in the sense they've been abandoned by the Biden administration, right? So for members of Congress to make an effort to actually go see what the problem is firsthand and hear from them directly in their town, that means a lot to them. I mean, because these are, unless you have family at the border, unless you grew up on the border, people don't usually go to the border unless they have a direct connection to it. And that's just because, it's a different area, different culture and all that, but they're still Americans, right? And so they feel forgotten. They feel like DC is just constantly putting them last, and don't get me wrong, to a point they are, but by showing just that gesture, it means the world to them. Just because, again, these are small towns, and you don't see too many people campaigning. You don't see, besides the local politician or what have you. So, but also just more than anything, it shows, like, for example, none of the House Judiciary Democrats showed up, right? And so they did it. It was an official hearing. This wasn't just some ad hoc. Oh, we're gonna.
No,
it was official congressional business, and the Democrats didn't bother to show up.
I'm just so shocked, I guess you could call it, that we have a sitting president who is intentionally trying to destroy the sovereignty of our nation. He is allowing people to come in, over 1 million illegals that have crossed, that have not been caught. These are people that are in our country today. And you've got to, any normal thinking American is going to say, why doesn't our president care about protecting American citizens? And we see it. This is my point. We're not just it's not just the states that line the border. This is all states should be concerned. I'm from New York, you're from Kentucky, and I see what's happening in New York. For example, the rise in gangs in schools across, Long Island. Bayshore, Huntington Village. These are areas where families are taking their children out of schools because they're seeing these gangs that are now gaining a lot of momentum back on Long Island, where we had done a good job many years ago trying to get rid of MS-13 and such. So my question for you is that you mentioned that a lot of people don't see it or feel it, but I'm here to tell people and to remind our members that this is an issue that is impacting every state in America. And when you combine the defund police movement with millions of people crossing our border unchecked, we don't know who they are, what needs to be done now in order to assure that this doesn't get worse over the next year and a half? How hopeful are you that there are some things that we can do to prevent more folks from coming over? I spoke earlier with Tom Homan, who mentioned that it's important that these lawsuits proceed, that we keep Title 42 in place. Is there anything else that we can do to ensure that we are helping those who are protecting our border with limited resources from the Biden administration?
So I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but it's just that outside of the lawsuits, there's not a whole lot we can do, right? Because yes, we have the House, but the Senate, we had our shot in the midterms, didn't work out. And the thing is, a lot of the problems have stemmed from not the legislative branch, but the executive branch, right?
That's right.
And so, yeah, yes, don't get me wrong, like the lawsuits should definitely proceed and they should definitely, take place. But me personally, we're not going to get back on the right track until there's a change in the White House. At the same time, we can't just pin our hopes on the next election cycle, because it might not work out, right? So
you're sounding the alarm, which is great.
And so that's why I'm writing, because people need to understand that this is a huge issue, and it's happening every day. It's been, and like I said, the border has always been a problem. Immigration has always been an issue, but it's just like with almost every other issue that the Biden administration is trying to solve, they end up actually making it 10 times worse than what it needs to be. And the border, you take foreign affairs, you take inflation, take the economy, crime, within the United States, and so the border is no different. So again, I hate to be the kind of the doom and gloom guy, but it's just a simple fact that this was all started by the executive branch, and it's not going to stop until there's someone else different.
I like that you're saying it
in the executive
Well,
branch.
you keep writing, Julio, okay, and you recently wrote it was a heartbreaking piece about a mom who lost 2 sons to fentanyl overdoses, and she recently testified before Congress, and you wrote about her testimony. Would you share that testimony and what you experienced?
Yeah, the people, the Democrats specifically, and they like to say that the fentanyl problem and the immigration problem are 2 separate issues, because they say, well, fentanyl is being mostly seized at ports of entry and they're being smuggled in by mostly American citizens. That is true to a point, and the reason why I say that is because, well, of course, when you have a manned checkpoint 24/7, or when hours are available, of course you're going to interdict and seize more fentanyl there because there's people there, as opposed to the rest of the border, which is patrolled by Border Patrol. If they're pulled off the line because they have to process people, because they're willingly giving themselves up in hundreds at a single time, of course they're not going to be able to stop the drug smuggler that's sneaking in. And where do you think the cartels are getting the money to offer thousands of dollars per trip to try to smuggle in through the ports of entry? It's not just because of the drug trade. It's also because of the money that they're getting from illegal immigration. It's not like they have this is we're going to just put the money strictly in drug smuggling and this is going to be money strictly. No, this is a criminal organization where this is not an actual, a profit that has, a company that has bylaws and all this stuff to make sure that they're having, dotting their T's and crossing their I's. It's very much the same. It's one and the same. And so that's why her testimony was so powerful, because yes, they were taking what they thought was Percocet. Okay, you could talk about that, but that shouldn't warrant a death sentence, which is what exactly happened to her 2 sons. She lost both at the same time. It was the same night that it happened. And I posted her video. I posted the testimony, and people are saying, well, it was 2020. That was happening under Trump. Okay, yeah, correct. But what has happened since then?
Right.
Fentanyl overdoses have increased, not decreased. One of the best examples of how deadly and profitable fentanyl is for the cartels. they don't allow fentanyl to be sold in Mexico. You can buy cocaine, you can buy weed, but they will not allow fentanyl to be sold in Mexico because they want the profits and they want to prevent the scourge of fentanyl happening in their own communities. One of the only places you can buy fentanyl in Mexico is the slums of Tijuana. That's one of the only places. So, I mean, think about that.
Yeah. And we have a president who's got informants, people telling him what's happening, over 100,000 deaths in the United States of America. And I'm curious, I'm curious what you think about China and their role here, and how we are allowing China to prop up these drug cartels and infect and infest our nation, our youth. In your opinion, how prevalent is China's influence impacting what's happening, what we see at the southern border?
I mean, they send the precursor materials to Mexico. They ship it. The
precursor materials for fentanyl?
For fentanyl, yeah. They send it over, and Mexico takes it in, and the drug cartels do their thing. And in fact, but here's how ruthless the cartels are. They're trying to cut China out because they don't want to spend the money on the precursor. They're trying to figure out how to just get the materials themselves, so they can basically have monopoly from
cut out the middleman.
Exactly. And so, because again, that's how profitable it is for them. And so even if, let's just say, even if the fentanyl and illegal immigration were two separate issues, why would you want to make the cartels more powerful by increasing their cash flow? Why it wouldn't make any sense. So right. In fact, it depends on the area of the border, because different parts of the border are controlled by different cartels. But some cartels have completely shifted their business model to mainly focusing on taxing people who are trying to get into the United States illegally, because that is way more profitable than drug smuggling. Because, like, yeah, sure, if you're smuggling drugs, there's a chance it's going to be interdicted, and now you lose out on the profit. But for the type of illegal immigration that's happening now, where people aren't afraid of being caught, most of them obviously still have the godways, but now you have people who aren't afraid to be caught, so it's a done deal. I mean, their money is guaranteed. So, of course, from a business standpoint, it makes sense for them to shift their focus. And then, of course, you still have the oil thefts, you have the extortion from businesses in Mexico. So, I mean, the Biden administration has been one of the best things that ever happened to the cartels in a very long time.
Julio, keep writing. Please keep writing. Keep us informed. Keep informing Americans. Wonderful time. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us on Broadcast Row. It's very informative. Really appreciate what you're doing. Just keep up the great work.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Appreciate your insight.
Thank you.